Hello, I'm Mike Kepka, aka the Curious Creative and owner of Kepka House Video Productions and Marketing Strategy. I welcome all of my fellow curious creatives out there joining us today. It is my pleasure to introduce to you David Belkin, self-described community solar fanatic and founder of Grid Avec, Denver's newest and fastest growing community solar company. David has more than 7 years of experience marketing solar projects to early adopters, and now his company Grid Avec, in its first year of operation, is set to move past the $2 million mark in the coming months. He brings with him a unique perspective on how to reach subscribers in the field where face-to-face interactions means everything. His claim is that he's knocked on more than 10,000 doors to make sales and is pretty much ready for anything anybody throws his way. When he's not thinking about solar, he can usually be found performing sketch comedy or writing sketch comedy or taking care of his responsibilities as an active duty Marine. We're so lucky to have David with us here today. David, how's it going?
It's going great, Mike. I appreciate you having me here on the Curious Creative. That was a very generous opening there. Appreciate it.
You're listening to The Curious Creative with your host and video expert, Mike Kepka. My pleasure, sir. Well earned and well deserved. So tell me a little bit about the community solar business. How did you get started and where is it taking you today?
I kind of have an unconventional background. I was actually in cooking and chef for 10 years, ever since starting when I was 15 years old, working in fine dining. And at 10 years in, I was kind of burnt out. I worked for a 3 Michelin star chef in Chicago, and was kind of looking for just a different career change. To be perfectly blunt, I was used to making like $11.50 an hour, even in fine dining. So I was looking to also just have something that had brought in a little bit more income and gave me a little bit more free time. So sales was sort of like in marketing were basically the two things that got opened up to me. And I eventually stumbled into an energy company in Chicago that was working for major companies like subsidiaries of Exelon and Constellation Energy, doing door-to-door sales and even a little bit of retail sales campaigns. There was my first exposure to sales altogether. And eventually that led to going more on the commercial side and moving to the East Coast and opening up an energy brokerage. And then the pandemic hit. So I started kind of dabbling into something different because operations kind of ceased. Energy markets were in a disaster. So I kind of dipped my toes in a little bit of rooftop solar. And then I stumbled into this new industry known as community solar. And it was a situation where I kind of thought it was too good to be true. The product seemed a little bit too perfect compared to like what I was used to from the energy sales. And it ended up being amazing and a rare circumstance where I saw a lot of opportunity. So I ended up closing down my brokerage and moving out west to start in the community solar full force. And it's been going great since. It was definitely the best decision.
Tell me, David, for people who don't exactly know the difference between rooftop solar and community solar, just give me the breakdown and then what your job is to sell that to people out there. And of course, you're in charge of the company now, so you have people to sell for you, but you hit the ground running early on, right? So,
oh, yeah, absolutely. So the main difference between community solar and rooftop solar is that community solar is a legislative-based program that a handful of states, I'd say about 10 active markets right now, passed a bill that allows people to get access to solar power from a local solar farm without actually having to install anything on the property. It's kind of on a subscription model. So let's say, for example, you have a 5 megawatt solar farm that you see get built at the side of the highway. And this 5 megawatt solar farm can hold like 800 residential subscribers, maybe a few small commercial subscribers. And in those markets, those residents and small business owners can apply to subscribe to that local solar farm, and they get access to the full solar offset delivered by the grid, and they won't have to install anything. And what's nice about it is it opens up to people who are renters, who live in multifamily situations like apartments and condos, people who are on leases with rent, because it has no hardware aspect to it. Through virtual net metering, anyone now can have access to to solar power.
So it's a way to get solar without putting all this stuff on your roof, or even if you don't have a roof, you can tap in and get the benefits on your utility bill.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So how does that relate to 10,000 doors that you've knocked on? Tell me how getting a subscriber is related to you personally knocking on a door.
Most of my sales experiences comes from the door-to-door side, from deregulated energy and energy brokering in Philadelphia and Chicago, and then rooftop solar. That tends to be the method. So I kind of just went with what I knew because it's really effective, and with community solar being such a new thing and the nature of the product, because it's essentially free. Anyone can subscribe without any extra cost or fee. You literally just get to claim a 10% discount by credits that are being placed on your bill. So because you have a product that seems like this, it seems that door-to-door is the best way to convey this message, because I mean, anyone who kind of thinks otherwise, or thinks that it's sort of like this outdated industry, my opposition or rebuttal to that would be like, when was the last time you answered a telemarketer or bought something from a telemarketer? When was the last time that you actually got a flyer for a product or for a program in your mail that you actually looked at and can seriously consider or even purchase from, rather than just chuck in the mail? This is something that you have to communicate very nuanced and thoroughly, because the number one objection you're going to get is like, what's the catch? This sounds too good to be true. And you kind of need that.
Okay, so part of my goal here with this podcast, David, is to get myself, if nobody else, but to get my listeners to understand what it takes to actually market and sell to people, no matter what genre or platform that we're on. So what does it take to actually make a sale? And I think you've called a sale a subscription, right? You're not actually selling it. You're getting people to sign up. So paint me a picture. You're in a neighborhood. What's the neighborhood look like? You're going to knock on the door. Are you worried somebody's going to yell at you? Somebody who's never done this before, you got to have kind of a thick skin, right? How does it go? Tell me some stories.
Yeah. When I remember my first sales job was door to door. I didn't even know it was door to door till it was my first day of work. I remember getting the job, just so excited to try something new. I was like, all right, and I didn't really have any idea what it was till someone took me out to the field, and it kind of was a little bit of a shocker. We drove like an hour and a half out to a suburb of Chicago and started knocking for this energy thing, and in my head, I thought it was really antiquated and outdated. This is not encyclopedias or Hoover vacuums. But it turns out it's not as brutal or grueling, and people are not even nearly as mean as possible. You have a lot of weird and interesting stories for sure, which I'll definitely get into. But it's one of those things where psychologically, you're in your head most of the time. And no matter how long you've been doing this, even after knocking 10,000 doors, in my most veteran salespeople, anytime you're going out to the field, in your head at the beginning of the day, you're always thinking no one's who's gonna do this? There's no way I'm gonna do anything, because. But then after your first couple of doors, it just becomes easy. We have a saying that the hardest door of the day is the car door, because it's hard to just get out there. But in the context
David, what's the first thing you say when you go knock on a door? What's your kind of?
Yeah. So
I'm on a training day with David Belkin. Tell me what the first thing you're going to tell me to say to somebody I've never met before.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you plan your territory correctly. So in other words, in community solar, we're incentivized to by commission wise to allocate by usage. So we don't call ourselves salespeople; we're community solar liaisons, because our job is to allocate that person's usage to the solar garden, get them to subscribe to it, and we get paid based off of the usage. So in my head, unless there's certain restrictions on the garden, this can only be for low income, but for the average garden, let's say I want to plan my territory. Well, I want to go where the biggest houses are, because I want to find a house where there's very large usage. So I'll go on Zillow or Redfin, and I'll literally filter out homes by square footage. So like I don't want, as like I'll find the neighborhoods where's the biggest concentration of homes that are 4,000 square feet or bigger with swimming pools, Tesla vehicles in their parking lot. I want some big usage because a huge selling point to them is the fact that like no amount of solar system is going to offset that house because they just use so much power. This can actually do that, and they don't have to put anything on the roof. So after I determined,
So I think what you just said, David, is that you're doing research on your audience, which is what I'm doing when I'm pitching to companies. We're
yeah,
not just pitching to anybody. It's very important to do audience research, and that's another way of saying what you just said. Am I
yeah,
right? Does that make sense?
absolutely. You got to be you got to have a plan.
Okay, so we've gone to Zillow. You've opened your car door. Now what?
Now we go out to the field, and then you got to make sure you have a way to track. So tracking door-to-door sales is a lot trickier than B2B sales because it's a lot more chaotic. So we use a special platform that can put markers on who we visited and whether the door was answered or not. And then the first thing I would tell you is like what we're trying to do today is to meet the law of averages, which is something that's pretty normal in sales. So in other words, the law of averages if you knock on enough doors, you're going to get to a yes no matter what. And the idea is to get that close percentage as close as possible. So the expectations I might set for you is, all right, we're going to start, we're going to knock for 5 hours today in the field. And we're probably going to knock around 80 to 100 houses. And out of every 10 houses, let's assume that only one person opens the door out of 10 houses. And then out of the people who answered the door, only half of them are going to be decision makers. And then out of half of those decision makers, the expectation is you want to be able to close at least half of them. And I would say that would be like the best average scenario that we want to get you to, and then we start to refine that. So then we'll.
This is like the original social media. I mean, like it's all about numbers, right? And the more people you hit, you sort of start narrowing that down to people that are actually going to convert or subscribe in your case, right? It's the
Exactly.
same. Seems like it's the same exact thing. This is OG marketing,
Yeah.
right?
And then we have a special sales pitch, a script that we've refined over years. I wrote the original one, and the one that we use today is only a slight variation of that one. One thing that we do in our company is at the once a year, the top performing rep of the previous year gets to have to make some modifications to the main if there's some that are needed at all. So we're constantly refining the pitch to be as perfect as possible, and it's a meritocracy when it comes to that. So the best salesperson gets the final say. So and we have a saying, our script we always say like this script will make you $100,000 a year because if you could be as awkward or weird or as like nervous as possible, but if you can utter those words to some semblance of competency and then just understand the product and have some interpersonal, you're going to sell consistently. You're going to close at least 2 or 3 deals a day with 5 hours in the field. It's almost a guarantee on that with so much data to support that fact.
So, David, you mentioned the script. How important is mindset when you're going out into this field? I know that, like, people who are making pitches, a lot of people talk about it's important to have your A game and your mindset in the right place. How does that play a part into knocking on the door?
I mean, it's everything. Like, it's funny because it's so many people are shocked at the amount of income you can bring in by doing this, and to also have a product that you feel really, really good and can stand behind. It's rare when you have like those combinations, but to get someone to actually do the work is like 95% of the challenge. That's why we say like the hardest door of the day is the car door. And and a lot of people just don't have the discipline or can build up the habits to be able to just like do it. Being consistent matters more than anything. Like I would tell any of my reps that like doing 1 or 2 hours in the field a day, but 5 days a week is better than doing 10 hours one day or 8 hours one day and 5 hours a second day. It's all about having consistency because part of being doing door to door is also having that mindset of professionalism. People associate a lot of negative connotations with door to door these days because of how antiquated and its history. And I feel like a lot of door to door companies, whether it's like in pest control, door alarms, rooftop solar, there's a lot of people, a lot of companies that just don't have like really like decent professional standards because there's not much expected of them. So like one of the things to get people into that mindset, like this is not just some scrappy kind of thing that you're using to get by. Like, no, if you're going to work here, you're a career salesperson. This is as legitimate as any other place. So everyone has to wear branded uniforms. We use nice polos like Brooks Brothers branded polos. Everyone has to use an iPad. They can't enroll people on a phone. They have to have business cards, a actual professionally printed ID badge. They have to have appropriate documentation and permits from the township that they're able to knock in. A lot of this stuff, it seems so like, I don't view it as like remarkable or anything special. It's like the base level of common sense business, but you'd be surprised in the door-to-door world how low the bar is, that so many people just don't follow these guidelines. So just being appearing as someone who's professional and someone that would want to open the door for you is the beginning part. And the second thing is you need to get get to the door as soon as possible, because the more that so many people drive out to the field and then they just kind of wait in their car and kind of dread the first door. And this is something that happens to all of us, including myself. But the faster that you can get to the first door, it's you don't think about it anymore. It's kind of like going to the gym. Like going to the field, it's like waking up. It's getting your alarm it's like saying the night before you're ready to start your gym habit, and you set your alarm for like 6 a.m. and then your alarm rings at 5:45, and now you're having second thoughts. So you're going to have the same kind of mental push. So it's all, and that comes to overcome that is all preparation, having a plan of where you're going to go, and also teaching people like to have the mindset of like, don't like it maybe like as a salesperson, if the intention is to make as much money as possible or to be motivated by commission, like every time you see you drive around town and you see like a large house or a mansion or something, like you just see dollar signs above it because the usage is really large. That's sort of like a unique internal mindset.
Sounds like a job for an extroverted person, which is the thing that like I'm very extroverted. And so I kind of get energized when I talk to people, but I imagine somebody who isn't extroverted wouldn't want to do this job, or do they get over it? Is it just the consistency and the technique that helps people get past that?
So this is a paradox. I'm actually a really introverted person myself. This is a career field that actually gave me a lot of like social skills. And I actually feel like introverted people do really well in sales, and especially door-to-door sales. Surprisingly, and the reason for that is I also ran a retail campaign for an energy company in Pennsylvania, and where if you've ever gone to the mall and seen like one of those kiosks where people are like trying to hand you samples and are kind of like carnival barking. I had to do that, and I ran the largest campaign in the country for that energy company, and that is an extroverted game. Like that is a very, very uncomfortable, probably the most uncomfortable form of sales, where you're having to reach out to people walking in the middle of a mall or an event or some sort of place, and you're trying to bring them in because you're going to be rejected probably hundreds of times a day, just to and not just rejected publicly. So it feels a little bit more uncomfortable. You need really thick skin to want to do that. I would have to drink probably 4 or 6 espressos before my shift to even get myself amped up enough to do it. Because it was not very fun. The reason why I actually think door-to-door sales is an introvert's game is because you actually don't talk to that many people in a day. Even 5 hours in the field, you're probably going to speak to 20 to 25 people in a day tops. And if there is any rejection, it's very private, and the communication is very personal. And I feel like introverted people do really well building a personal connection. They come off as much more trustworthy. Because we have that stereotypical, very extroverted, uppity used car salesman. Like that vibe doesn't really do very well in community solar.
So translate that into something that I can understand. Is that are you a little more reserved at the door, or you're less likely to make a joke, or what is, I'm trying to learn here how to, because I am the extroverted person. So how do I turn that into my advantage from your point of view?
So yeah, that's a good point. You definitely want to play to everyone's strengths. Obviously, extroverts are good from the fact that they're comfortable doing that job. Like even as an introvert, like there's always a level of uncomfort to door knocking in aspect, but you eventually just kind of get over it. But as an but to answer your question, if you're an extrovert, how you can use that to your advantage for like door knocking is energy levels and attitude. Because one thing is like if you really think about what we do, it's kind of like it's almost kind of like a superpower. Because if you think about it, like imagine walking to a stranger's home who's never met you before, was not expecting you. You're probably interrupting their day in the middle of a work day, and then you're going up to them and pitching them something they've never heard of that sounds like it's too good to be true. That's probably that they probably might think it's even a scam. And then within about 10 minutes, you're already getting them to have them show you an energy bill, and they're putting down their auto pay information to be a part of this community solar garden. That's a very normal aspect of it. So it's wild. It's wild to think about. But a rule of thumb for people, and this is more advice for introverts, but one thing that extroverts do really well is when you answer the door, you need to be very in tune with like people's energy levels and and take a quick assessment of like how are they coming to the door. Are they aggressive? Are they calm? Are they really lively? You have to make sure you have to kind of be a chameleon with the personality. So the rule of thumb I always tell people is you want to be just 10% higher than their current energy level. So for example, if someone answers the door like, "Hey, how's it going?" and they're very low energy, you don't want to come up to them and be like, "Hey, how's it going? By the way," you'll scare them. Like that's a mismatch. Right. But whereas in like if someone comes to the door and they're high energy, like, "Hey, how's it going? What do you need?" and you're like, "Oh, nothing," and you're bringing them down. Now you're ruining their day. You're sucking the energy. You're a party pooper, drawing the energy out. Okay. So just being so I always tell people you're probably going to say the first word like, "Hey, how's it going?" Always keep that high and then wait for the response. You're not talking to them. You're actually actively listening, and you're waiting for the response. So, "Hey, how's it going?" and you wait for the response, and that's your calibration to how you should communicate to this person. And just being a slight 10% above where their baseline is doesn't suck the energy out of the room, and it doesn't overpower them to where they're uncomfortable.
Wow, this is like, these are things that I think we as humans maybe do automatically, but you have sort of dissected it the way we might dissect a golf stroke or a tennis stroke, right? Like because you've done it so much, where the successes and the failures come from, I would imagine, right? David, I think it's story time. Do you have anything where you can tell me maybe a conversion that you didn't think would happen that did happen, or a funny time that made your day, or something you'll remember, for 10 years from now?
Oh yeah. It's funny. So I think I'll start with a huge a scenario that I came across quite a bit in rural Maryland, and it taught me a lot about human nature and how to relate to communicate to people. So I was filling up a solar garden that was in a very more rural part of Maryland, very small area. It was the Delmarva utility, which is on the eastern part of the state, closer to Delaware. And one thing
not far from where I grew up, by the way.
Oh,
people.
yeah.
I grew up in Newark, Delaware, so that Delmarva was something I'm very familiar with. Anyway, continue, please. Sorry.
You're probably, I'm guessing you're probably familiar with the fact that you're going to see probably a whole division of political spectrum there, like a lot of people that are a lot of Trump flags, a lot of conservative people that might not be as keen for solar.
Right.
I try not to be political about these things, but it's again, you have to understand your demographic, and for some reason we've made it where having clean, cheaper energy is a political thing. But one thing that's funny is like when I was in pitching in a place that was strictly Trump country, I definitely I learned a lot about how to commute. I had an interesting interaction with a gentleman who answered the door. He was probably in his 60s, and we're talking about him. They always answer the door. It was very, very nice. He's like, oh, I think solar energy is great and all, and I was like, I think global warming is probably a problem, but like what they don't tell you is that it's actually the solar panels that are causing it, because if we keep building all these solar farms and solar panels, it's just drawing in more sun, which is heating up the earth. And and that was definitely something that caught me off guard. And I just kind of went with it, had a chuckle, and talked with him, and he introduced me to a neighbor who did sign up. But
so you found a sale through another person, which is also a bit of a
probably the most
technique as well, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't make the sale to the first person.
No, sometimes you just got to know, know when you can't. But probably the sale that I'm most proud of, that's kind of impressive, is I had this one was actually in Colorado. I knocked on a door where it was an older couple. The husband was a retired worker of the local utility and didn't like was very supportive of the utility here. His wife was very, very nice, much more liberal than him, and she was like prepared to sign up because she was the one who initially answered the door. But when the husband came around, he kind of shut the whole thing down altogether, and it became sort of like this weird, awkward argument between them about no, we should do it. No, it's like solar's not good. We shouldn't add more of it to the grid. Stay with the local utility. And as I was hearing this, I started becoming more. I started to empathize more with the husband. Is hey, I totally understand. I'm just some guy who showed up at your door. I understand. This is probably weird, and I know you're a former employee of the utility, but hey, look at it. At the end of the day, this program exists. It's not going to take you away from your utility. In fact, your utilities has its own solar projects as well. Why not just take the cheaper discount? And he started to come around a little bit. But he was like, no, it's like Excel's been around for a long time. I was like, but think about it. Do you really want a monopoly? Isn't it better that we have choice and more options at the end of the day? Because even though you were part of Excel, we both know that they're not perfect. But at the end of the day, it's it's better to have competition. Why should we have this legal monopoly dictate everything? It's going to put more pressure on them to actually have to compete and be more competitive as prices rise. And when you started taking that approach and it became less political about what solar means and everything, he started to kind of turn a leaf. And then I kind of shares even though I'm a solar person, I don't think this is a perfect save all. I'm realistic. I know how the grid works. You still need base load versus intermittent load. Solar cannot replace natural gas or coal as for one front until we have proper battery storage. I'm actually pretty in support of things like geothermal and nuclear and hydroelectric that can also act as base load. And we all have to use these things that in their appropriate capacity. And when you start communicating, you don't seem it appear as this greenwashed person, and that and you have a down to earth conversation. We finally got him to take on. He's like, all right, you got me. I'll take the 10% and go green. And
so he subscribed. It was a win.
It was a win. Yeah. That's so.
David, I was trying to paint a picture here of, so I do video, of course, right? Video marketing strategy for companies out there. And I was trying to figure out, how does the door-to-door concept and all that personal interaction you're talking about relate to video? And it suddenly just came to me, of course, I'm making these interactions when I'm actually pushing record on the camera. So I'm interacting with these people to get people to deliver or do an interview that seems authentic, so that I can turn that into a message that people will understand on the other side of the camera. I guess I can't really do door-to-door video, but I kind of relate to what you're talking about, all these things. If you were going to do video, and I know that I know that you said door to door really works for you, but let's say suddenly there are no more doors, which we'll come to that funny one in a second. What do you think would work in this day where we need to break through the noise, as you said earlier?
I mean, people respond to like quality entertainment. Like, what's funny is ads are annoying to people, but I think people like a good laugh, and I think like some of those campaigns, kind of like the Dollar Shave Club, or even most recently the Super Bowl's. It was CeraVe. The CeraVe commercial, in my opinion, was a masterpiece of just fun, really, really funny, relatable content that doesn't take themselves too seriously. I think that's a very, very positive approach, where like the value that you're giving is sort of like a positive entertainment and lightness, and because I think people are just kind of sick of like overselling, overhyping buzzwords. Like I always believe like under deliver or under promise over deliver, but I that would be like an approach if I were to like try to market to communicate the ideas of community solar. If I were going to use video in a capacity that I do now, I think video is very well positioned in a way to support the role of like the boots on the ground kind of sales, because the sale isn't over when I leave the door. The sale is over when that customer pays their first bill on that community solar garden when it goes live, because I'm putting people on a wait list for that garden to go live a few months later. And one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of these community solar companies, we deal with this all the time, is like they don't a lot of them don't invest in the post-sale type of interaction with the customer service, providing context. Because one thing about door-to-door sales at the end of the day is it is an impulse type of sale. Like at the end of the day, because no matter how good an interaction went, you're always going to have people are going to naturally feel buyer's remorse, whether it's like 24 hours later, because it's not a normal, you did something that really broke them out of their normal behavior and routine. So you have to be prepared for that. And it's one of the reasons why we implemented business cards, is because we want people to communicate with us, to feel like, hey, we stand behind what we say. If there's any issues, to contact the person that you actually spoke to, not necessarily the 800 number that you're going to have to talk to in regards to your community solar account. So I think having video as a post sale of like welcoming people, what to expect. I've even used video at the door as a way to help communicate. Having video as a way to leave people with, for people who didn't tell you no, but they want to like think about it or want you to come back at a later time. Having something that's really, really concise, that can break down everything post sales, like a nice welcome package, matters a lot, and that's how I would definitely use video. But
yeah, I didn't think about that. The post sale sounds like a really good place. I'm thinking, actually, I wonder if there's a place for video in. So we do this thing called the buyer's journey, and it means that we're approaching different audiences at different places in their understanding of what it is that we're trying to market to them. And I wonder if your job would be easier at the door if people sort of had an idea that they sort of wanted to A, do good for the planet, and B, join their neighbors, and just sort of get an overarching understanding of what community solar was. So by the time they got to you, they were already a warm lead, right? I wonder if that would sort of do its thing. I want to ask you something, because I think you got excited when we talked about the comedy ads that you've seen, and I mentioned earlier that you do some sketch writing. I also know that you're a Marine, and so how does how often do you bring your personal experiences into the sales approach with you? I mean, I know that when I'm doing videos, I can't help but be who I am and capture and edit the way I do because of who I am. How does that relate to your funny and your military?
I honestly think that improv and sketch comedy has helped me more in the sales realm than any other thing that I've done. On occasion, I've done sales workshops, and I do a lot of sales training, sales teams specifically in the door-to-door realm, and I utilize improv exercises and improv kind of games and stuff to help people improve their sales. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to not take yourself too seriously. I think when it comes to pitching, most people would say I'm crazy for saying this, but like, at least in my world, I feel like a perfectly executed polished pitch is probably inferior to a little bit of like scrappy pitched, because it comes down to storytelling. Because like every sale is your, because since we're not really selling a product that's traditional, like we're basically replacing your billing to the garden versus the utility at a guaranteed discounted rate. So there's no reason not to do it. So you have to bring not forget about the community aspect of community solar. And the story that I want to tell at the door, and I teach this to all of my reps, is how do you want to come off at the door? Do you want to come off as a salesperson that's just trying to get something out of the customer? Or are you trying to be like a community leader to get them on the garden? I mean, there's no wrong answer. The approach that I felt like worked for me that I did was I want people to feel like, and I want to come off at the door as like, I'm the guy who's part of the community solar team that's responsible for building up this local solar farm that's in your area. And I just happen to be on door duty today because that's like the next step of the thing. And I'm not normally here, and I don't, and this is sort of out of my realm too. So like, I think it works in my favor to be a little bit off kilter, a little bit unpolished, because it seems more down to earth, rather than it comes off as something that's really like robotic and rehearsed. That's I would say that's
sort of like the Columbo style. Like,
exactly.
I don't know if you ever watched the old Columbo shows, but kind of acting a little bit humble, maybe a little bit out of the loop.
Yeah, exactly. Self-awareness is everything. I think so many people in sales, not just in the door-to-door world, but I think sales in general, I feel like a lot of salespeople are just very arrogant by nature, because the pressure to make commissions is so high that we lose sight about like how ridiculous our line of work kind of is. And to kind of poke fun at people who are in the telemarketers, I feel like telemarketers or people who do phone dialing are naturally some of the most arrogant salespeople out of all the group, because and you can test this. Like if you ever pick up the next time you get a telemarketer, or someone calling you, I want you to actually stay on the phone, but just be polite, but just show you're disinterested in a very polite manner, and you will get responded with all the reasons why you're wrong, and why their product is so great and their service is so great, and that why you need to compel them, all the reasons why you need to convince them why you shouldn't do it. I mean, that's super arrogant, in my opinion, because it's very unself-aware. Because you interrupted, like we're soliciting to a degree. I mean, like I interrupted your day, you're giving me the time of day, and I expect you to trust me, a stranger, on everything that I'm telling you to pressure you into a decision right now. That and be up and get really upset or be confused why you wouldn't want to do that. That's kind of unreasonable. I'm a big fan. One of my biggest favorite things that I teach people in sales is beating people to their own objections, because it demonstrates really, really high self-awareness. I want to know, I know that if I know that 90% of my interactions are going to result in the question, what's the catch? Then I'm going to make sure that that objection is addressed in the pitch. Probably the line that really, that made my conversion rate way higher is after I pitched, I would go, you're probably wondering what's the catch, or like, this sounds too good to be true. And you're right, because I'm just some stranger at your door. That represents a lot of self-awareness and understanding and empathy to the fact that I'm not so far gone in my world that I don't find that the situation that I just put this person in is not as strange as it is for them as it is for me. So that's why I feel like being a little bit nervous and introverts do really well, is because being uncomfortable in a situation like that is a way to is perfectly empathizing with the customer or the potential lead. It shows that like what you're that you don't have. No, you're not going there with the expectation like I don't understand. I told them all the facts about why it's so great. I'm here. I took the time out of my day to do it. Why aren't they like? It's such a terrible mindset to go into, and it's very makes someone appear very self unaware.
David, that's about the time we have today. I want to give you the opportunity that I've given everybody else that I've had to give me one last nugget of goodness before we sign off today. Anything you want to say about anything? Maybe what's the most important thing to take away from all of your experiences related to marketing or door to door?
Just a good nugget of wisdom I would say is that if you ever want to get good at sales, then or want to get into sales, regardless of like what the product is, or and really like challenge yourself, or really like have a level of growth, I recommend trying a door to door sales job. I feel like a lot of like well known entrepreneurs had that experience, and I get why there's a lot of value into it. There's so much life lessons that go into it. You don't have to make a career out of it, and you should pick a product in a company's culture that you really enjoy and like, and give it a shot, and you'd be surprised. It'll change your outlook on the world. I feel like it's made me a more empathetic person. The world is not as scary. People are not as mean. People have all different beliefs and everything. We're not so different, and it really helps with the way that you communicate. I feel like even if you're in marketing, like if you're having very little trying to get some real data or understanding of like how to market to your audience or communicate to your audience, put some boots on the ground and start talking to people. Like that's where you're going to get the best information, and that's the best way to relate and to get out there. Is you got to be willing to do that. It's going to be uncomfortable, but guess what? It's even more uncomfortable for them than it is for you. So that would be my recommendation, and it gives you thick skin. It turns yourself rejection proof. I've been told no more in a month than most people get in a lifetime.
And there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to David Belkin on the Curious Creative. Boots on the ground, he says. We'll catch you next time. Thanks again, David.
Yeah, appreciate having me on, Mike. Have a good one.